Welcome to 24 Hours to Pass, Business Analytics Edition. Hopefully you've enjoyed any of the sessions you've been able to hear so far today. This next session will be Sean Boone's session on visualizing data with PowerView. The whole event consists of 12 live webcasts, followed by 12 on-demand replay 12 hours after that. So keep in mind that you'll be able to see those on-demand sessions. If you miss something during the first 12 hours of the conference, you can catch up on the second 12 hours. If you are looking to watch these again but want to do it some other time, then maybe in a very inconvenient time for you, given which time zone you might be in, you should be able to see those next set of sessions on February 11th, or somewhere around February 11th, from the PASS Business Analytics Conference at passbaconference.com. Well, I'm Steve Hughes, and I am a practice lead for Giant Technologies in the area of data and business intelligence, and I'm also a regional mentor with PASS, as well as a frequent speaker at SQL Saturdays and some of the user groups in the area. So at this point, let me get through a couple introductory slides before I hand it over to Sean. First of all, if you need technical assistance, go ahead and you can see the raise your hand icon. Go ahead and click on that and raise your hand, and we'll get some help to you right away. First of all, make sure that your speaker is not muted. We want to make sure that you can hear everything and see everything as it comes along. If you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A field. That would be preferred. You can, at the end, you may be able to use a chat as well, but I won't be tracking the chat for Q&A. What we'll do is we'll queue the questions and we'll fire them rapid fire at Sean at the end of the session. So if you want to stay connected during 24 Hours of Pass, the website is, hopefully you found it by now, 24hoursofpass.com. And you can use the chat feature to chat with other attendees. And you can also follow us at Pass24HOP on Twitter. So can't go too far without thanking our sponsors, because this is a free event, and that wouldn't be possible at all without the help of Microsoft and Time Extender and Dun & Bradstreet. All these are sponsors for both the conference and for the 24 Hours of Pass, and their support is greatly appreciated. Take a moment, if you have time, to go ahead and check out these sponsors and get an understanding of who they are and how they can help you with your BI projects. If you are looking to go to the actual conference after you had a nice taste of sessions today, then you can find that information at passbaconference.com. There's a registration code here for $150 off registration. However, as a user group leader, I would encourage you that if you are a member of a user group locally in your area and you want to support them as well as get $150 off your registration, please be sure to ask your chapter leader for the code that they can use that gives some money back to the user group, as well as providing a discount. So I encourage you to support your local user groups in this way. If you're not affiliated with one, then I encourage you to go ahead and use the code you see here. You can also stay connected to the conference in a number of other ways. As this is kind of a preview for the Business Analytics Conference, you can check out all the various sites and LinkedIn and so on. Also check out our virtual chapters. Many of the topics that are covered will be covered through the variety of virtual chapters we have in the area. If you go to SQLpass.org, you will find more information about those virtual chapters and a lot of areas of interest to you if you're interested in this conference. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Sean. So get him kicked off here. He's a Senior Program Manager Lead for the Data Platforms Group at Microsoft. He is, I would like to say he's personally responsible for PowerView, but he'll probably say they had a whole team helping him. But this is an awesome tool, and Sean has been a part of this team and making that happen. He's also worked in other areas of business intelligence and data visualization, including Excel services, the Accelerator for Business Intelligence, and some of the chart controls. So without further ado, I am going to hand this off to Sean and let him take over, because that's who you came to hear anyways.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. And yes, absolutely. There is a whole team of folks working on PowerView here at Microsoft. So I'm going to try to switch over here to get the web video going. Let's see here. Folks can see me okay. All right. Does that work? Brian, Steve, can you hear me? Moderator.
Yep, we see you just fine. So.
All right. Okay. So for the next hour here, we're going to talk about this application, PowerView, which is an interactive data visualization experience that resides in two places. And we're going to look at that in the context of both of those experiences. The first being in the browser with SharePoint, and the second being inside of Excel 2013, which is a recent addition to sort of the PowerView family, if you will. So for folks who are not familiar with PowerView, right off the top, I just want to emphasize again that this is an application that's designed to really help you explore your data, visualize your data, and interact with it in a very ad hoc way. It's focused very much on exploration and presentation, and I think that'll become evident as we sort of go through the demonstrations that are here today. Now, in terms of some of the capabilities, I just want to highlight some of the top capabilities here. We've got capabilities to do things like filtering. We've got a support for a wide variety of visualizations, including column charts and your standard scatter charts and your line charts and visualizations like maps. You have the ability also to export out to PowerPoint, and you're able to interact with the data directly on the canvas. And again, all of this will make much more sense as we go through the demos here in the presentation. Before we get started, I wanted to take a minute and talk briefly about, sorry? I heard somebody, okay. Talk about some of the user experience design principles that we have for PowerView. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of these things. The first one is that we really designed this application, again, it's mostly about exploration, and what that means is that we really want things to be available to the user very quickly. So if it takes you more than 2 clicks to achieve what you're after, that's something that means we probably didn't design it very well, and went back and made sure that as you're interacting with the data, the things that you need to do are always right there, not more than a couple clicks away. Everything happens on the canvas, so as you're interacting with the data, you're actually working with all of the data, and you're seeing the results immediately. You don't have to, run a query and wait for 10 or 15 minutes to get the result. It all comes back relatively quickly. And the other thing is that we've really sort of constrained the environment in some ways, and really focused on some of the core things that you need from a visualization and analytics perspective. And that sort of removes, it helps keep the application focused on, the types of business questions that we're targeting with the product. And so there are not a ton of different options. You don't have to spend time configuring things like axis labels and how, what numbers do they start at and end at. There's not a single property page in PowerView because, again, as you're exploring your data, the last thing that you probably really want to interact with is a property page that tells you that you need to configure your axis labels in order for you to understand your data. So again, it's a very streamlined experience, again, around being able to explore the data and see and make sense of the different things that you're seeing on the canvas. And again, from a perspective of one of the reasons why we've designed the application in this way is, again, users don't have a high tolerance for going out and having to research and read help articles, et cetera, as they're in the application. They need things to work the way that are sort of intuitive and are very quick to understand. If you have to go off and read a help article in order to understand how to use the product, that's taking you off of task for the business questions that you're trying to understand. So with that, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to go ahead and switch out to a demo, and we'll take a tour of the application. We'll talk about it in the context both of what we originally shipped with SQL Server Reporting Services prior to Service Pack 1, but we're also going to spend a lot of time looking at the new functionality that we've brought into the product as of November with Service Pack 1. So with that, I'm going to attempt to do a screen share here. Excuse me. Again.
Hey, Sean, as you're starting to do this screen share, could you go ahead and turn your video off? Because we're experiencing some bandwidth issues. So
how do I turn off my video?
Just go ahead and hit the icon. Go ahead.
The webcam
Yeah,
one?
go ahead and...
Okay,
yes,
I'll turn that
right.
off. All right, there we go. All right. So,
Great,
all right, so go to launching my screen share. All right. Okay. All right, so here we are. Are we able to see the application okay? From the moderator
we're looking good.
All right, excellent. Okay. So just a little, I'll describe what's going on here. We are actually in SharePoint right now. I have a set of Power Pivot workbooks inside of this Power Pivot gallery. I have created these workbooks. I'm sharing them, publishing them up to SharePoint, and inside all of these Power Pivot workbooks are actually a model of data that I can interact with and do that with PowerView. So I'm going to go ahead and launch PowerView. I'm going to launch it off of this workbook that's called FAA 2012. I'll explain a little bit more in detail about what that means as I start to work with the application. We'll give it a second here to launch up. Here we go. All right. So now we've launched PowerView. This data set that we're looking at here, if you look over in the field list area, is information about flights that occurred in the United States over the last 12 months. This is information that is published by the U.S. government. You can pull it down and bring it into Excel, and once we get to the Excel portion of the demo, I will show you the Power Pivot workbook that is here. But this is all data around how on time the flights are in the domestic United States. So for those of you who are in an international setting, I'm sorry I don't have data for the international carriers, but this is all data from the U.S. carriers that are here. So just really quickly, for those of you who are not familiar with PowerView, over here at the top of the application is a ribbon. We've built that to be very much like the Office experience for ribbons. We believe that our users are accustomed to working with that. And so we've added that to PowerView as a way to do a lot of the changes that you make in the application. Over here on the right, as I showed before, is the field list. This is all the data that I'm working with in my model. And it's just sort of very much like a pivot table field list if you're familiar with Excel. Down here at the bottom is an area where I can drag fields if I want to. And then right here we have a filter pane that you can collapse and use both at the visualization level and at the view level. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get started, get a lay of the land of what we're looking at here with my data. And so I'm going to go into the flights table, and I'm going to grab a count of flights. And I'm interested in looking at this data by carrier. So I'll grab the carrier short name. And you can see that we're looking at about a little over 6 million flights that occurred over the last 12 months in the U.S. It goes up, the data here goes up to November of 2012, goes back to December of 2011. Now, one of the things about PowerView is that we wanted to make it possible for people to switch the visualizations very quickly. So right now I have a table by default. All PowerView visualizations start as tables. But if I want to change it to a column chart, it's really simple. I just go right here to the ribbon, and I say that I want a column chart. I didn't have to interact again with a property page to make that happen. And now you can see all of the flights for each of the number of flights for each of the carriers here in the U.S. Now, for one of the questions that we have in the Twitter contest, I'll go ahead and take a look at how many carriers there are in the U.S. You'll notice that right here it says that there are 17 carriers in the U.S., but actually by the end of 2012 this was not the case. And I'll go ahead and show you how we can get to that answer. I'm going to go over here and look at my date entity. and I'm going to go ahead and look at the month and year. And I'm just going to drag it out into the filter pane. And you can see, again, I've got data from November 2011. It actually goes, from December 2011 to November 2012. But if I click on November 2012 and filter the data down just to that data set, what you're going to find is that there was actually a contraction in the market a little bit. Some carriers went out of business or merged with other ones, and there's actually only 15 carriers that are operating in the U.S. right now. But I'm going to go ahead and undo that filter. But again, notice that we've got the filter pane over here, and it also restates what you have actually selected. I'm going to go ahead and undo that filter. And then I want to look at this data by different distance groups. Different carriers operate for the most part as either regional carriers or carriers that fly lots of different routes. So we'll go ahead and we'll add another set of data here on the canvas. And so I'm going to go ahead and get the flight count again. And this time we're going to look at their distance groups, how much they fly by. And here we go. And I've got a distance group. And again, very straightforward for me to just go right to the ribbon, turn this into a column chart with one click. And now another hallmark that we have of PowerView is that the visualizations on the canvas are interactive, automatically interactive between each other, if you will. So for example, if I click here on Southwest, which is the largest carrier in the U.S. By a significant margin, we can see the proportion of flights that they are flying by different distance groups. So in this case, they have a huge chunk of the 250 to 499 mile routes, if you will. But again, if you look at something, for example, a very interesting data point here is Hawaiian Airlines. And what you'll notice here with Hawaiian Airlines is that they have a lot of flights that fly in the 250-mile range. Those are obviously island hopper type flights. But then there's nothing in here between that and 2,200 miles. That's probably a good thing, because if you were flying anything short of that, you probably have a water landing on your hands. But it's just very easy to see here by clicking on my data where these different carriers operate and the type of distances that they're flying. Now, one of the things that you can do with these charts as well is if you want to sort the chart, which is a very common operation for folks, all you have to do is go up here to this little area at the top of the visualization, and you can sort it by the flight count, ascending or descending, and notice that all of that, again, is just one click away. I didn't have to interact with a pop-up or a property page to make that happen. All right. Now we have we have a new visualization that we added to the product with Service Pack 1, and that is the pie chart. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this bottom visualization here, and I'm going to convert that to a pie chart. Notice again, I didn't have to start over, delete the visualization that I was working with. I can just transform the existing visualization that I have into a pie chart. And again, the interactivity works. So again, if I want to see Southwest, I can see that the large bulk of their flights, pretty much compared to their other ones, are in that 250 to 500 mile range. And if I'm looking at something like Delta, it's a little bit different. So we get this partial highlighting effect on the pie charts as well. So that's one view of the data. I'm going to go ahead and create a new view of the data. And to do that, I'm going to go and expand this area here that shows all of the views that are in this report. And I'm going to choose the option to create a new view. So here we go. I'm going to generate a new view. Here, come on. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, here we go. All right, so I've got a new view here. Oh, just a second. Just a moment here. I'm having an issue with my screen. Okay, here we go. All right. So back here in the application again. This time I'm interested in looking at the data by, I want to look at flight delays by the different airports in the U.S. So I'm going to go ahead here and grab the flight count, actually the number of flights that have been delayed. So let's look at, we'll grab the flight count number. There we go. Just over here. And we're going to go ahead and look at this by the different airports that are in the U.S. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the origin. Go. All right, and in this case, I've got the airport and the state. And you'll notice that there's this little, oh, hold on a second here. There we go. We have both the airport and the state data here. And there's something going on with my screen here. Just a second. Hold on a minute. Just a moment. Right. All right, is the moderator there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of issue here with my screen. Okay, it just came back. All right.
I jumped on.
All right. So what's that?
That's because I jumped on the call.
Okay. So I'm back here. I've got the origin and the states in my data set. I just want to check my task manager here really quick. Okay, I'm fine. All right. And I want to look at this data on a map. Now notice again, all I have is the name of the airport and the state, things like Abilene Municipal, etc. And to turn this into a map, all I have to do is go to the ribbon, click on the option to turn it into a map, and I get a nice map visualization. Very easy to do. Didn't require me to go ahead and geocode that data. And what's actually happening here is that we're actually sending the data out to Bing, and Bing is aware that these are actually airports and is able to go ahead and classify those and put them on the map for us. And of course, you know, I can move the map around if I want to. I can zoom in a little bit more if I want to as well. And what I'm actually interested in answering here is the question around how many flights have been delayed by more than 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and start to add some more data to the view here. We'll look at the flight delays, which is in my flight table. I actually have a KPI defined in this model, which is the number of flights that have been delayed by 15 minutes or more. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. This is a new piece of functionality that we've added to the product with Service Pack 1. I'm going to go ahead and put the status on here. There we go. And I'm going to grab the short name of the carrier. And I'm going to go and turn this into a card visualization. Slightly different view of the data. All right, move it over here. And I also want to add an image for the carrier, and I have a carrier image in my model. There we go. So now I have these nice images in the model, and I want to look at the percent delayed by 15 minutes. I'm going to grab the value. There we go. All right. And again, I can sort these cards by the value or the name. I'm going to go ahead and sort it by the value, descending. All right. Now, right now, this is the values for the whole U.S. So I've got United Airlines here with 21% of their flights being delayed by 15 minutes or more, followed by Atlantic Southeast. But if I'm interested, for example, in a particular city like Seattle, I can just click on Seattle. And you'll notice that I now have, for example, Continental, in this case, had the most. Now, I think Continental is actually not operating anymore. It was in there for 1 month, but you'll see United is there. And if you scroll down, you can see which airlines are performing better based on the selection of that airport. And again, if I click around and click something like Minneapolis, I can see the differences there as well. So again, everything here on the canvas is entirely interactive. All the visualizations cross-filter each other that are on the screen. All right. So now the question that we probably ought to ask ourselves is how do we make sure, for example, that we can get to the PASS conference on time? And so the PASS conference is obviously being held in Chicago. So we'll go ahead and create a new view. All right. And we're going to go ahead and filter this data down to our known destination, which is Chicago. So I'll go ahead and grab the city name, and I'll do a search here to go to Chicago. This is going to apply a view level filter. So now I'm just going to be looking at data in Chicago, and we'll give this a title called On Time for the PASS Conference. And then I want to add a map that shows where you might be flying from. Now, again, this is just U.S. origins. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the airport and state. This is where you'd be flying from. I'll turn that into a map. There we go. And we'll go ahead and we'll show flight counts again. Actually, we'll grab it from the flight table. There we go. All right. There we are. And there's a couple of variables in play here that will determine whether you are actually on time or not on time. One of them obviously being the carrier that you fly. So I'm going to go ahead and add the carriers back to the display. So I'll grab the carrier image. And I'm going to turn this into a slicer, which will allow us to basically cut this visual by the airline in question. So for example, if I'm flying on American Airlines, these are all the cities now, all the airports, if you will, that actually fly into Chicago. All right. The same with JetBlue. Again, there is I'm having a lag with the screen. There it goes. All right, JetBlue. You can see that there's a couple of cities that flies into. There it goes. And here is United. There we go. And so obviously United is a much larger carrier. It's operating in many more cities, and we can see that very quickly on the map. Now, so if we want to make sure that we're going to get to the PASS conference on time, just a moment here. Having a little bit of, again, let's see here. All right. There we go. Just a moment. There we go. All right. So we're going to go ahead and shrink this down a little bit. And maybe what we're interested in finding out is the percent of flights, again, that have been delayed by more than 15 minutes. So I'm going to go and look at the actually percent delayed departure, which has a value. Here we go. There we go. Second. All right. And we'll look at this by, for example, day of week, because obviously if you're flying on a certain day of the week, you will more likely to encounter delays. So we'll put weekday name on here, and I'll turn this into a bar chart very quickly here. Now again, as I'm interacting with the data, so for example, if I'm flying United and I'm leaving from Seattle, right, you'll notice that I have a fairly good chance of making it on time unless I leave, for on a Wednesday, where I'm going to be 45% chance of actually leaving late. So that's one way to look at the data. And of course, if you are flying from other cities, you'd be able to go ahead and, for example, click on, let's say, Denver, and the visual will update to show you the lateness from Denver. Again, I'm having an issue with the screen at the moment. Let's see if I can switch back here. So the map is a new feature that we added to the product for Service Pack 1. And again, it primarily leverages Bing to do the geocoding for the locations. However, you're not limited to that. If you have data that has already been geocoded and you have latitude and longitude, you can go ahead and add that. As well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and jump back out. And we're going to talk about Excel for a moment and the Excel integration that we have. All right, so let me get back in here. Presentation. All right. All right, so before we move into the portion of the demo for Excel, I just wanted to call out that we effectively now for PowerView have two experiences for PowerView. The first one is the one that I just showed you in the last demonstration, which is the browser-based version. Now, it's really important here to sort of understand the differences here. This artifact that we just created inside of PowerView is an actual PowerView report. That is the artifact. You work with it in the browser, you consume it in the browser, you save it up to SharePoint, and that is the type of file that you're working with. Now, what I'm going to show you next is the integration that we've done with PowerView in Excel. And PowerView in Excel is, you can effectively think of it as a new sheet type for Excel. But the most important thing about PowerView in Excel is that it truly is a part of Excel. It's not like we've put it, you manage it as an Excel document. So there isn't a separate artifact. Everything that you do with it is just an Excel workbook. So when you save it up to SharePoint and you view it in the browser, you're going to view it in the context of Excel services and Excel Web Access. And again, if you're on the desktop, you're going to be interacting with it inside of the Excel application. It's really just a new sheet type that we're bringing into the product. It's the best way to look at it. Now, why did we bring PowerView into Excel? Well, for starters, it's great now that we have all of the modeling capability and the analytics capability and the reporting capabilities, and we've brought them all in to one tool, and that tool being Excel. So if you're working on a Power Pivot model and you want to start building some PowerView content, you can do it right there inside of Excel. You don't have to leave the application to go to the browser to start building reports. You can just do it all in one place. The second reason, one of the big benefits that we have, is the fact that we now have PowerView available offline. So just like with any Excel workbook, you can pass this workbook around, and whether it's emailed or whether you want to share it on SharePoint, which is obviously an online scenario, but you now have this ability, just like with any Excel workbook, to just use PowerView in the context of the document. Again, one of the hallmarks that we have for PowerView is that sort of cross-visual interactivity that I demonstrated earlier. That comes into Excel as a result. And with PowerView, we have some new layout paradigms, things like multiples and trellis displays. We have scrolling visuals and some different layout paradigms that are different than a traditional spreadsheet grid, if you will. So in PowerView, all of the visualizations are independently scrollable, whereas in a traditional Excel worksheet, what is scrollable is the actual entire grid. And so that's a very different layout mechanism, and it brings a really good new capability to Excel. And then lastly, of course, with the introduction of maps, we now have maps inside of Excel. All right, so with that, I think what we're going to do is just go ahead and cut into a demo here, given the amount of time that we're on. I'm going to jump into Excel and show you some of the capabilities that are there. All right, so let me go to my screen share and launch my screen share. All right, start my sharing. All right. So I'm gonna start with a very simple scenario in Excel, one that everybody is probably familiar with, and then what we'll do is we'll progress, and I'll show you some of the settings that are in the model that are going to get generated after I've done a lot more work. I'm already seeing questions in the chat window around how do I get images into the model, et cetera. How do we manage to do that? And so I'll show you all of that as we go through here. But this is a very simple example right here that everybody can relate to. It's just a table of data and a flight count. All right?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. We can't see your screen yet, John.
Oh,
we're unable to see your screen. So
my fault. I did not click the start sharing button. Here we go. Now we should be good. All right. All right. So all I have here is just 2 columns of data. I wanted to highlight really quickly just a couple of really new great features that are in the Excel application independently of PowerView. So for example, now if you want to do some quick analysis on top of this data, you can hover over the cells and see data bars or a color scale, a top 10% without actually having to commit the change. And that's just a really a great addition to the product that lets people spot these types of trends quickly. Notice that right away when I hover over the data bar functionality, I can see that Atlanta, Georgia is just by far and away the largest airport in the at least on the screen that I've got here right now. All right. Another great capability that we've added is called flash fill. I'm going to insert a new column in my data here. And let's say, I've got right now city and state, but I want to get that state abbreviation. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I've tried to do this type of operation, I'm writing left and mid and right functions in Excel, and it takes me, a good 15 minutes to get it all right. But now you can just type in SD in Texas, and you'll notice it immediately starts to fill in. There we go. All right, so it really fills in the rest of the values for you. And so I don't have to think anymore about how to write that formula. It just does the separation for me. And it works with all sorts of different types of data. If you have things like you're trying to parse across things like Social Security numbers, whatever it might be, you can do that as well. So I would encourage you to try that feature out rather than trying to write a formula. All right, so like I said before, let's get into PowerView here really quickly. So if I want to add PowerView to this workbook, all I have to do is go up here to the ribbon and type and choose the PowerView option. It's going to ask me if I want to create a new PowerView sheet. And in just a moment here, I'll have PowerView loaded. And again, here's that exact data that I was just looking at. And if I want to turn this into a map, all I have to do is go to the ribbon again and click on map, and I've got my map. There we go. So again, you see the data being filled in here. The first time that we actually go out and create this map, we're doing the geocoding on the fly, filling in all the data points here. Once you save the workbook, you won't see that anymore because we actually cache that data in the workbook. But you can see all the U.S. airports here very quickly. If I want to zoom in, I can do that as well. And so it's just very quick, very easy to do for me to create a map based on a very simple scenario. Now there's a lot that's going on here as that happened. And this is a really important part about the integration that we've done with Excel, is that what has happened is we've actually created a Power Pivot model, and it's inside of the workbook. The Power Pivot data engine is now the analytical engine for Excel. For many of the scenarios that are in Excel now, if you try to create pivot tables that span multiple tables, or if you create a Power View sheet, what's actually going on behind the scenes is we're actually creating a Power Pivot model. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my finished workbook, and you can see I've built some other views here, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the Power Pivot window. Now again, for people who are not traditional data modelers, etc., the example that I just showed you, you can do that and not even be aware that the model is there. All of that gets created behind the scenes. But as you dig deeper, this experience really scales depending on the expertise of the user. So if you're a traditional data modeler, you're familiar with business intelligence tools, and that's where you spend a lot of your time, you can go create a Power Pivot model here. You can see that I've imported all of this data. I've got all the flights here. It's about 6 million records all sitting inside of Excel. I have cancellation regions and distance groups. All of this data was imported into Excel either by being on a spreadsheet in the workbook. In this case, the destinations I pulled from the workbook directly, or they came from a SQL Server connection. So you can see here, I can connect to SQL Server Access. I can pull it from a data service like Azure Marketplace, and I can also pull it from lots of other different sources that we support. And you can really mash up this data all here inside of Excel, and then use the visualizations that we have both in Excel and in Power View to look at this data. So I wanted to show a couple things that some folks have already asked about. One is the image functionality. So if you go to the carriers, you'll notice that I've got a column here that says binary data. That is actually data that I imported from a SQL Server database. For those of you who are interested in how you can actually get the data into SQL Server so that you can pull it into Power Pivot like this, feel free to ping me offline, and I can point you to some information on how you can do that, and I'll give you the information on how to do that towards the end of the presentation here. And then if you go in here to table behavior, you'll notice that I have the ability to give my a default label, which is what showed up in the cards of the display, and then I have a default image, which is the carrier image, and that's allowed the images to show up inside of the cards that way. I also have support for URLs, so if you have if you want people to be able to launch to a website, you can do that as well. And then I'll show you the geographic data that allowed the maps to work. So you'll notice here, if I go to airport and state, I've tagged this as a place, which you can do just by going in here and saying more categories, and then you can search for different categories, and one of them is a place. But you'll notice that we also have support for states and postal codes and counties, etc., and it's pretty straightforward. You'll notice that there's also cases where the application will automatically tag the data for you. It will suggest different data types. And so in many cases, if you have something that's just as simple as a city, Power Pivot will go ahead and recognize right out of the gate that you're actually working with that type of data, and you don't actually have to go set that functionality. Now, when you're done, one of the things that you'll want to do is, again, if you're up here in SharePoint, I'm going to go ahead and jump back here. Just a second here. As you can view this workbook sitting inside of Excel services. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this workbook. And now, for example, I've got a pivot chart here that I'm working with. It's fully interactive. I can go and change on, if I'm interested in the data for Tuesday, it'll update. If I look at my arrival delays, I can change the state name, the name of the carrier. ExpressJet actually went out of business. That was one of the ways I found this out because their data ended in December of 2011. You have the regional carrier SkyWest. This is just looking at the arrival delays. But you have all that interactivity sitting here inside of Excel services in the browser. And notice that you can also now with Excel services change the content of pivot tables, which was a big request that we received from customers, and it's now in the product with the latest release. And also notice in here as well are my Power View sheets. So it'll take a second here to load up in the browser, but I have some data about canceled flight statistics. And again, interactive just as it was inside of the Excel application. I can click on the points of the map, and it filters the rest of my data inside of here. All right. So I had one more statistic to share with you. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up really quickly here. Notice that when I'm in the Power Pivot gallery, this is a completed report that I've already built. I'm able to hover over all the thumbnails that represent the views in the report, and I'm going to go ahead and launch this one here. And this is this will help you with the second question that we have. One of the interesting data points that I found in this set is that was related to the amount of time it takes the planes to leave the airport. I actually listened to a show not too long ago. I believe it was on NPR's Planet Money, and they were talking about some of the ways that the airlines, some of the low-cost airlines, are saving money. And it turns out that Southwest, for example, they have the shortest taxi time on the runway. And, I can actually drill in here and look at this by state if I want to. That's a new feature that we have in the product with Service Pack 1. I can actually drill down into my data. And so I've set up a drill path here to drill to state. But it turns out that the pilots for Southwest, for example, are incentivized to actually to be in the air. And so as a result, it actually shows in the numbers. As such, you can see that they have a very short taxi time. Another carrier that also has a short taxi time is Hawaiian Airlines, and I don't have any additional information around why that's the case, but they appear to actually be beating Southwest now for the quickest time off the tarmac. So with that, I think I'm going to switch back over, and we've got 10 minutes left, and we will answer questions. So let me see if I can get back here. All right. All right. So, and did I end my screen share? I believe I did.
Yep, you've ended the screen share.
You're back. All right.
For the, there we go.
Let me go back to the presentation. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. One being The maps in PowerView, we've already talked a lot about this. That is, they're point-based currently. They also have support for pie charts if you have multiple categories associated to a single point. And again, they're mostly related on geocoding support from Bing, but you also can just supply your own latitude and longitude, and that will work as well. Again, there's a long list of sessions at the conference that will be related to PowerView. So I definitely encourage folks who are interested in PowerView to attend any of these sessions at the conference. I've got a link here in the deck for some additional materials. Definitely check out the PowerView wiki that we have, as well as some of the white papers that we have here that will help you work with PowerView and how to get it set it up, lastly, if you're interested in, if you're a heavy Twitter user and are interested in asking questions about PowerView, there's a lot of folks who will use the hashtag #PowerView. Also, if you want to be able to get a hold of me offline, if you have questions here that we didn't get a chance to answer today, my Twitter name is the same as my name, so feel free to send me email, or send me a tweet, or you can also send me an email. Again, it's just my name at Microsoft.com. Feel free to send me an email, and I'll help you get answers to those questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Steve, is there a particular order that we go through here, or?
Yep, I'll start firing those up. You guys should see a survey pop up as well here, so go ahead and fill that out while we're going through questions. So we're going to start at the first set of questions were around the first demo that you did.
Okay.
The field list on the right. Is this something that a user can change, the available fields in that list?
So typically the way that works, so you don't necessarily change the fields that are there. You can control their visibility, and you can do that in the model. There is a capability inside of PowerPivot to say, hide from client tools. And so if you want to restrict the number of fields that are displayed there, or maybe you're using, in my case, I have calculations that are building up other calculations, and I don't want to show the intermediate ones. You can do that as well.
All right. Follow on to that is, if the field list is populated from multiple sources of data, how do the business users know when or if the data is up to date, or what the latest update of the data is?
So we don't actually surface the latest update information inside of PowerView. Now you can do what you can do is on if you're using SharePoint. What you can do is, for example, if you're using PowerView inside of Excel services, one of the things that you can do is you can set up scheduled data refreshes for PowerPivot workbooks. And so what will happen is you can set that up to run every day, you can set it up to run up once a week, whatever it might be, and that'll all sort of happen in the background, when the users come online. In their next session, they'll just get the latest data based on whatever frequency that is.
All right. Next question. Are the views static, or could they be embedded into SharePoint as a dynamic view so that users can interact with them as needed?
So
I think you might have demoed that.
Yeah, the views in SharePoint are all dynamic. One thing that I did not demonstrate is the PowerPoint integration. So you're actually able to export these views to PowerPoint. If you've built a PowerView report, one of the things that you can do is you can just export directly to PowerPoint, and that actually brings the dynamic content over to that scenario. So you can do all the filtering and highlighting that I showed you in the demo inside of PowerPoint when you're giving a presentation. Now, obviously, that requires you to be online in that scenario. If you're not online, you'll see a static image there that represents the content. But that's a really great capability that we have in the product. We have a lot of folks internally at Microsoft that are using that functionality when they give their presentations. So I would encourage you definitely to check that out.
All right. How much data can be? The question is how big of a data file can you share on the web with us?
So the example that I had right here was I had a Power Pivot workbook with 6 million records in it. We've been able to load much more than that in the context of SharePoint. So I can load up that workbook, put it in SharePoint. The workbook that has 6 million records in it is about 115 meg in size. But again, once it gets up to the server, I'm not actually downloading all of that to the client when I'm interacting with it in the browser. I'm obviously not loading down 115 meg of data. I'm just interacting with the workbook, and there's a lot of work going on server side to make that data available.
All right. Can you publish Power View reports from Excel to SharePoint?
So I just showed that actually. You can, if you have a Power View sheet inside of Excel workbook and you save that up to SharePoint, what you will get when you launch it is you get Excel services. And as you go through the different sheets, if one of them happens to be a Power View sheet, it will get rendered by the Power View application. But from an overall user perspective, it is Excel services. It's part of the Excel workbook.
So a follow-on to that, can that functionality be carried over to the new Office 365? If so, which versions of Office 365 will support it?
So we have, I think there'll be more information about Office 365 coming in the future. For those of you who were part of the Office 365 preview, that functionality was available on a limited scale. So if you had workbooks, for example, that were roughly 10 megabytes in size, as part of the Office 365 preview, you were able to upload those and work with those inside of the browser. So yes, that capability we have demonstrated that capability, but we'll have more information about Office 365 integration in future conferences and future disclosures.
All right. Can you use Power View with SSRS without SharePoint?
So if you're using Power View, you do need to have SharePoint if you're using the Power View application that I showed you in the browser. Now, if you're inside of Excel and you're just using Excel 2013 locally on your desktop, all the Power View capability that is there inside of Excel obviously does not, there's no requirement in that scenario to actually have SharePoint. However, if you want to then publish that to SharePoint and share it with your coworkers, obviously in that scenario, SharePoint is a requirement. But if you just want to work with data locally and use Power View, you can get the latest version of Excel and use the Power View capability that's embedded within Excel.
So I think this will be our last question for the day. May I use Excel 2013 plus Power View in SharePoint 2010, or do we need to upgrade to SharePoint 2013?
So if you're using the Power View capability that is inside of Excel, the answer is yes. You do need SharePoint 2013 to take advantage of that capability. If you're using the standalone Power View application, if you will, which is not inside of Excel, you are not required to have SharePoint 2013. What you do need, though, is reporting services and hopefully the most recent service pack so that you can get the new functionality such as maps and KPIs and drill support that we've added with the service pack release.
All right. Well, that concludes our session for today. If you have further questions, Sean mentioned that his Twitter handle is Sean Boone. And is your email address with a dot in there, or is it just your name without a dot?
Yeah, I don't think you actually have to put the dot in. It's just
right.
seanboone@microsoft.com. So yeah, feel free to send me questions, and I will definitely take those offline.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Sean, for a great presentation today. And everyone else, I hope you take advantage of the rest of the sessions that are coming up. Have a great day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone.